Imagine never having to buy tomato seeds again. Sounds like science fiction, right? But what if I told you that just one single, perfect, high-yielding plant from your garden could supply you with amazing tomatoes forever? Yes, you heard that correctly. There is a little-known method that allows you to literally clone your favourite tomato plants year after year, perfectly preserving all their unique varietal qualities. In this video, I'm going to reveal all the secrets of this amazing technique and prove that every single one of you can create your own endless conveyor belt for producing perfect tomatoes. Ready to ditch the seed lottery and the annual headache of starting seedlings? Then stick around and watch closely. Every year, millions of home gardeners and backyard growers go through the exact same ritual. First, the exhaustive process of selecting seeds, reading reviews, and hoping for that one perfect variety. Then comes the stressful planting, the pricking out, and the battle to keep every single sprout alive under the grow lights. And even if everything goes smoothly, there's absolutely no guarantee that the pretty seed packet will deliver what you expected. Mislabeling, poor germination rates, a disappointing flavour. These are familiar problems, aren't they? This traditional cycle wastes time, money, and most frustratingly, your energy and nerves. But what if you could break out of that vicious cycle? What if last season you grew a truly phenomenal plant, one with incredible sweetness, fantastic production, and great disease resistance? Usually we reluctantly say goodbye to that plant in the fall. And that's a mistake because that specific plant holds the key to an endless harvest. The method we're talking about is called vegetative propagation. Essentially, it's about creating a genetic copy, a clone, of your very best plant. And it is much easier than you think. Alright, let's dive into the fundamentals. What exactly is vegetative propagation when we talk about tomatoes? Simply put, it means creating a brand new plant, not from a seed, but by using a part of an already existing, established plant, what we call the mother plant. Most often, we use the lateral shoots that grow from the leaf axils, which we commonly refer to as tomato suckers. Tomatoes possess an astonishing trait. Virtually any piece of the plant, given the right conditions, can sprout roots and develop into a fully mature, fruit-bearing specimen. Think of it this way. It's like if you could grow a perfect clone of yourself just from clipping off one finger. Sounds like science fiction, right? But for plants, this is completely normal biology. This method of propagation completely and perfectly copies the parent plant's genetics. This means if you take a cutting from a bush that produced incredibly sweet and massive fruit, your new plant will yield the exact same kind of harvest. No surprises, no genetic lottery. You get a 100% guarantee that the variety, along with all its unique characteristics, will be preserved. This is precisely why the technique is so highly valued by professional breeders and experienced gardeners who want to stabilise, multiply, and save a particularly successful specimen. But here's the crucial question. Why is this method generally superior to starting with seeds? The first and most obvious benefit, which we've already touched upon, is 100% genetic reliability. If you find your perfect tomato variety, congratulations, you've now cloned it forever. Second, we have speed. A plant started from a rooted cutting or sucker begins producing fruit significantly faster than one grown from a tiny seed. It bypasses all the slow stages, germination, cotyledon formation, and early establishment. You essentially have a ready-made mini transplant that is weeks ahead of any seed-started seedling. Third, the cost savings. Think about the expense of specialised seeds, high-quality seedling mix, starter trays, pots, and dedicated grow lights. Propagating tomatoes from cuttings eliminates the vast majority of those initial expenses. Fourth, this method allows you to rejuvenate older plants and harvest almost continuously, even indoors during the off-season, by simply growing them on a windowsill. This isn't just a propagation technique, it's an entire strategy that fundamentally changes your approach to gardening, making it more predictable, cost-effective, and highly efficient. The success of this whole venture hinges entirely on selecting the perfect stock or mother plant. Not just any tomato bush is worthy of starting your endless dynasty. You need to approach this selection process with utmost care. First, the plant must be completely healthy. Scrutinize the leaves, the stem, and the developing fruit. Look for zero signs of spots, mold, wilting, or physical deformation. Remember, when you clone a plant, you inherit all its characteristics, including latent diseases. If the mother stock is sick, its entire lineage will be infected. Second, select the most productive and robust plant. Compare it to its neighbours. How heavy is the fruit set? Are the tomatoes large and uniform? How thick and strong is the main stem? Your aim is to select a true champion. Third, and perhaps most crucially, is taste. Only take cuttings from a plant whose fruit has genuinely blown you away. This entire process is about preserving that unique, exceptional flavour. The ideal time for selection is during peak fruiting, when the plant is displaying its true potential. Mark this prize plant with a ribbon so you don't mix it up, and treat it like the treasure it is. This is your genetic gold standard for years to come. Timing is absolutely crucial when it comes to taking cuttings for rooting. We have a couple of options here, and each one is perfect for different goals. The first and most common period is midsummer, typically July or early August. During this time, tomato plants are actively growing and produce a lot of strong, healthy side shoots. Cuttings taken now root very quickly and will have enough time to produce a harvest before the end of the season, especially if they are planted in a greenhouse or large containers. This is an excellent way to get a second wave of production. The second key period is late summer and early fall, roughly from late August through the end of September. This is the time when we prepare to save our favourite varieties for winter. We take cuttings from our best plants, root them, and bring them indoors so they can grow on a sunny windowsill. These plants will become our mother plants for the following year. Come spring, we'll take new cuttings from them, giving us strong, established seedlings ready for the new season. It is generally not recommended to take side shoots too early in the spring when the plant is still weak, or too late in the fall when the plant is already suffering from disease or weakened by cold weather. The ideal cutting should be young, green and firm, measuring about 4 to 6 inches long and always taken from a healthy, vigorous shoot. Before diving into the main task, we need to gather all the necessary tools. Good preparation is truly half the battle. You won't need anything complicated or expensive. Everything you require is likely already within reach. First, you'll need a sharp cutting tool. An ideal choice is a utility knife with replaceable blades, a scalpel, or a very sharp fine pair of scissors. It is crucial that the cut is clean and smooth, not crushed. Dull snips or pruners can severely damage the stem tissues, hindering successful rooting and potentially leading to rot. Second, disinfection is mandatory. Before making each cut, the blade must be sterilised with rubbing alcohol, chlorhexidine, or another effective antiseptic. This step is critically important to prevent transferring potential diseases from one plant to the next. Third, you'll need containers for rooting. These can be simple plastic cups, small, dark glass jars for water propagation, or tiny pots filled with peat or vermiculite if you prefer rooting in a substrate. Also, prepare room temperature, standing water, or a light, airy soil mix. Rooting hormones can be used optionally, but we will discuss those in a separate segment. Okay, we're all set. Let's move straight to the main event, harvesting the sucker. Just a reminder, suckers are the lateral shoots that grow out of the leaf axil, that little corner where the leaf meets the main stem. For propagation, we want second or third generation suckers that haven't become woody yet. Select a robust, healthy shoot, about the thickness of a pencil and 10 to 15 centimetres long. Ideally, it should have 3 or 4 internodes. Now for the most important part, the cutting technique. You need to make the cut with a sharp, sterilised tool at roughly a 45-degree angle. Leave a small gap of 1 to 2 centimetres from the main stem. Do not cut the sucker flush with the stem, as this can easily damage the mother plant. The small stub you leave behind will soon dry out and drop off naturally. Some gardeners prefer not to cut, but rather to gently pinch or snap the sucker off right at the base. This method is perfectly valid because the break creates what's known as a heel, a small piece of the main stem tissue. This heel is believed to promote better rooting. Try both methods and see which one you prefer. The main thing is to act confidently and avoid injuring the main stalk. Once you have the cutting in hand, the first critical step is proper preparation for rooting. You can't just randomly stick it in water or shove it straight into the soil. This quick prep takes just a couple of minutes, but it drastically improves your odds of success. First things first, remove all the lower leaves. You only need to leave 2 or 3 small leaves right at the tip. Why do this? Because without established roots, the cutting can't absorb water efficiently, but the leaves continue to actively evaporate moisture. By removing the excess foliage, we reduce the surface area for transpiration and help the cutting conserve vital moisture. If the 2 or 3 remaining leaves are excessively large, clip them back by half. Also, make sure to remove any buds or flower clusters if present. Right now, the plant's main goal should be focusing all its energy on root formation, not on flowering or producing fruit. After that, carefully examine the bottom of the stem. If the initial cut is uneven, refresh it using a clean, sharp knife. You can also make several shallow, longitudinal scratches, about ½ an inch long, on the stem. This light wounding damages the outer layer and encourages root growth specifically at these points. Your cutting is now fully prepared and ready for its new beginning. We'll start with the easiest and most straightforward method, rooting your cuttings directly in water. Beginners love this approach because it literally lets you watch the magic happen as those first tiny roots emerge. For this, you'll need an opaque container, something like a dark plastic cup, or a jar covered in aluminum foil. Why the opacity? Roots actually develop better in the dark. If light hits the water, you risk growing green algae, which will compete with your cutting for essential nutrients and oxygen. Pour room temperature, settled water into your container. Avoid using cold water straight from the tap. Place your prepared cutting into the water so that the bare, lower part of the stem is submerged about 3 to 4 centimeters deep, roughly 1.5 inches. Crucially, make sure the leaves do not touch the water surface at all, or they will quickly start to rot. Set the cup in a warm, brightly lit spot, but keep it out of direct sunlight. Now all you have to do is wait and watch. You should change the water every 2 or 3 days to prevent stagnation. You can also add a tablet of activated charcoal to the water for a little extra disinfection. Typically, you'll see those first tiny roots appear after just 7 to 10 days. It's a truly exciting moment. The second popular method is rooting the cuttings directly into the potting mix. Many experienced gardeners favour this approach because it prevents the stress plants typically face when being moved from water into soil later on. Roots that develop directly in the substrate are already acclimated to those growing conditions. For this method, you will need a substrate that is very light, fluffy, and highly breathable. An ideal mixture is equal parts peat, perlite, and vermiculite. You can use a standard pre-packaged seedling mix, but always ensure you add plenty of amendments for better drainage. The substrate should be lightly moist, but never waterlogged or soggy. Fill small pots or nursery trays that have adequate drainage holes. Create a small hole or depression in the centre of the mix using a pencil or a small dowel. Dip the tip of the prepared cutting into a rooting hormone powder, shake off any excess, and gently place the cutting into the depression. Lightly firm the substrate around the stem base. It is crucial not to forcefully jam the cutting into the mix, as this could damage the delicate tissues. You should bury the cutting about 2 to 3 centimeters deep, sinking it up to the level of the first remaining leaf. Once potted, the cuttings must be covered with a clear plastic bag or a plastic bottle to create a humidity dome, establishing a greenhouse effect. Let's take a closer look at rooting stimulants. Are they really necessary? That's a topic open for debate. Generally, tomatoes root very easily without any extra help. Their stems naturally contain substances that promote root growth. So, in most cases, you can easily skip the root stimulators entirely. However, if you're looking to speed up the process, or if you're rooting a weak or particularly valuable cutting, these stimulators can be extremely useful. The most popular and readily available option is rooting powder, or its analogues, based on indole-3 butyric acid. This is a powder that you simply apply to the bottom of the cutting before planting it in the soil. There are also liquid stimulators such as heteroxin or zircon, where you can soak the cuttings for several hours before planting. Alternatively, there are some traditional home remedies. For instance, you can add a few drops of aloe vera juice or a spoonful of honey to the rooting water. Both have mild antibacterial properties and contain beneficial bioactive substances. Whether or not you choose to use stimulants is up to you. But remember this golden rule: less is often more. Overdosing can actually have the opposite effect and inhibit root development. When propagating cuttings, especially directly in soil, one of the most crucial elements for success is maintaining high ambient humidity. Until the cutting develops roots, it cannot absorb moisture from the soil, but its leaves continue to lose moisture through transpiration. To compensate for this loss and prevent the cutting from drying out, you need to create an individual humidity dome or mini greenhouse. This is very simple to do. If you are rooting your cuttings in individual pots, you can cover each one with a clear plastic bag, securing it with a rubber band. Alternatively, the top half of a plastic bottle works perfectly. If you have multiple cuttings grouped together in a tray or propagation flat, you can cover the entire container with a sheet of glass or plastic cling wrap. This sealed environment creates a microclimate with near 100% humidity, drastically reducing transpiration and helping the cutting survive this critical establishment period. However, there is one crucial detail. The humidity dome must be aired out daily. You need to remove the covering for at least 10 to 15 minutes to eliminate built-up condensation and ensure fresh air circulation. This step prevents the growth of mold and fungal diseases. As soon as you see the cuttings showing new growth and producing new leaves, you can begin gradually acclimating it to normal room conditions by slowly increasing the ventilation time. How can you tell if all your hard work has paid off and the cutting has successfully taken root? There are a few reliable signs. If you are rooting the cutting in water, it's quite straightforward. You'll simply see little white bumps, known as root initials, forming on the stem, followed by fully developed roots. Once these roots reach about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, or 1.5 to 2 centimeters, in length, your cutting is ready to be moved to soil. Rooting directly in a substrate or potting mix is a bit trickier, since we can't look underground to check progress. The main and most reliable sign is the appearance of new leaves emerging from the growth point at the tip. If you see your cutting starting to produce new growth, it means the roots have already formed and are actively absorbing nutrients. Another key indicator is turgor, which is the firmness or stiffness of the leaves. Right after taking a cutting, it might wilt slightly, and that's completely normal. But if rooting is successful, the leaves will become firm and perky again within a few days. Under no circumstances should you try to check for roots by pulling the cutting out of the soil. Doing so will only damage the tender and extremely fragile new roots. Just be patient. Rooting in soil usually takes between 2 and 3 weeks. Once you are confident the plant has established itself, you can gradually start removing the humidity dome or plastic cover and prepare it for its future life. Alright, your cutting has successfully rooted. Congratulations! Now it's time to move it into its new permanent home. This stage requires careful handling as well. If you rooted the cutting in water, wait until the roots are about 1.5 to 2 centimeters long and form a dense fibrous network. Do not leave the cutting in water for too long. Water roots are poorly adapted to living in soil, meaning the plant will have a tough time readjusting later. For the transplant, prepare a pot that holds at least 1 litre, or preferably 2 to 3 litres, and make sure it has essential drainage holes. Place a layer of drainage material, like clay pebbles or lacquer, at the bottom. The potting mix itself should be rich and well aerated. Create a depression in the soil, gently position the cuttings' roots inside, and carefully cover them with the mix, ensuring you don't snap or damage the delicate roots. Lightly firm the soil around the base and give it a thorough watering. If you rooted the cutting directly in a small container, the best method for transplanting is called potting up, or the transfer method. Water the plant thoroughly first, then gently slide the entire root ball out of the old container and place it directly into the new, larger pot, filling in the empty space around the sides with fresh potting mix. This process causes minimal stress or trauma to the root system. Following the transplant, place the plant in partial or indirect light for several days to allow it to acclimate to its new environment. The most interesting part of our strategy is overwintering our tomato plants. This is exactly what allows us to make the growing cycle continuous or virtually endless. Just imagine, snow is falling outside, but right there on your windowsill, a healthy little bush of your favourite summer tomato is thriving. In the fall, before the first frost hits, you take cuttings from your best plants, whether they are in the greenhouse or grown outdoors. You root them, just as we have already learned, and then transplant them into pots holding at least 5 to 7 litres. These are the plants that will winter indoors with you. The primary goal during the winter isn't necessarily maximising the harvest, though that is possible with adequate grow lights, but rather keeping the plant healthy and vigorous until spring arrives. Come springtime, you can take dozens of new cuttings from this mother plant, and by the start of the season, have your own robust, completely free seedlings. These will produce fruit much earlier than plants grown from seed. For successful overwintering, your tomato needs 3 crucial conditions: adequate light, the proper temperature, and smart watering techniques. This is not as difficult as it sounds, and it's perfectly achievable even for a novice gardener. Let's break down each of these points in detail. Choosing the spot for overwintering is absolutely crucial. The best location is the brightest windowsill you have, ideally one that faces south or southeast. Tomatoes are extremely light-hungry plants, and during the short daylight hours of winter, natural sunlight simply won't be enough. Because of this, providing supplemental lighting is practically a requirement. It's best to use dedicated full-spectrum grow lights. You should turn these on both morning and evening, ensuring the total light exposure for your tomato plant is at least 12 to 14 hours per day. Position the light fixture 20 to 30 centimetres, or about 8 to 12 inches above the crown of the plant. Moving on to temperature. Tomatoes genuinely dislike heat, particularly when it's combined with the dry air generated by central heating systems. For overwintering, the optimal temperature range is 18 to 20 degrees Celsius during the day, dropping to 15 or 16 degrees at night. Try to shield the plant from direct blasts of hot air coming off radiators, perhaps by using a foil screen as a barrier. Some advanced growers successfully maintain mother plants in cool, non-freezing basements or cellars at a much lower temperature of 5 to 8 degrees Celsius. Under these specific conditions, the plant enters a dormant state. However, this method requires significant experience and is not suitable for every tomato variety. Caring for tomatoes during the winter is a completely different ballgame compared to summer. The golden rule here is moderation in all things. Watering requires extreme caution. When temperatures drop and light is scarce during winter, the plant's water consumption decreases significantly. Overwatering is, in fact, the most frequent killer of indoor winter tomatoes, as it leads to the soil becoming waterlogged and promotes root rot. Only water the plant once the top inch or so, 2 to 3 centimetres, of soil in the pot has thoroughly dried out. Always use room temperature, dechlorinated water. Similarly, you need to be extremely cautious with fertilization. From November through January, when light levels are at their lowest, it's often best to stop feeding completely. If you do feed, apply a complex fertilizer with reduced nitrogen content only once a month. Nitrogen encourages leafy growth, and this growth will inevitably be weak and leggy during winter. Instead, focus on potassium and phosphorus fertilizers, which are essential for strengthening the root system and boosting the plant's overall immunity. Starting around late February, as the days begin to lengthen, you can gradually resume more active feeding. This prepares your mother plant for spring propagation. Finally, remember to periodically loosen or aerate the top layer of soil. This ensures the roots get better access to air. Growing plants indoors during the winter months comes with its own set of challenges, particularly when dealing with pests and diseases. The dry air generated by central heating systems creates the perfect breeding ground for spider mites. These tiny creatures are nearly impossible to spot with the naked eye. The telltale signs are fine webbing on the underside of the leaves, coupled with tiny yellow stippling on the surface. To fight them, your first step is always to increase humidity. Regularly mist your plants or place a saucer of water near the pot to help raise local moisture levels. For a direct treatment, you can spray the foliage with a solution of mild dish soap or insecticidal soap. Another common houseplant pest is the whitefly. These are small, white gnats that will immediately swarm and fly up whenever you bump or disturb the plant. Control methods include using bright yellow sticky traps, which they are highly attracted to, and treating the plants with biological insecticides. Products like phytoverm are an excellent choice because they are effective yet safe for indoor use. As for diseases, if you maintain proper care, avoiding overwatering and ensuring good air circulation, indoor tomatoes rarely suffer. However, as a preventive measure, you can periodically spray your plants every 2 or 3 weeks with a phytosporin solution. As spring arrives and the daylight hours get noticeably longer, our mother plant starts waking up and actively pushing new growth. This signals that it's time to prepare it for the new season and begin taking cuttings. This period usually falls in late February or early March. The first step we need to take is a rejuvenation prune. Remove all old, yellowed or weak shoots. Shorten any overly long branches slightly to stimulate the growth of new, vigorous side shoots. After pruning, the plant needs a good feeding with a balanced fertilizer high in nitrogen. This gives it the energy required to develop lush, vegetative mass. It is these new young, healthy side shoots that will become the perfect material for propagating our starts for the upcoming season. From a single, well-overwintered mother plant, you can get anywhere from 10 to 30 high-quality cuttings. Can you imagine that? You'll have an entire army of perfect clones from your very best tomato variety, all ready to transplant into the garden. They will be strong, healthy, and will start bearing fruit much earlier than those grown from seed. This is the culmination of our strategy, creating the ultimate perpetual tomato production system. Let's dive into the most common pitfalls beginners encounter when trying to master this propagation technique. Mistake number 1, taking cuttings from sick or weak plants. Always remember the fundamental rule: garbage in, garbage out. You should only be selecting the strongest, healthiest stock material. Mistake number 2, improper preparation of the cutting. Any lower leaves or flower clusters you leave on will steal vital energy needed for root development. Be ruthless, prune them off. Mistake number 3 is excessive moisture or overwatering. This is true whether you are rooting in stale water that you forgot to change or in soil that has turned into mud. Roots need aeration as much as they need water. Commit this to memory. It is always better to slightly underwater than to overwater. Mistake number 4, neglecting the humidity dome or mini greenhouse. This is crucial, especially when rooting directly in soil. Without high ambient humidity, your unrooted cutting will rapidly lose moisture through its leaves and will quickly perish. Mistake number 5 is simply rushing the process. There is no need to pull your cuttings out of the medium every single day just to check for root growth. Have patience, monitor the plant for external signs of life, and trust the process. By avoiding these common errors, you are practically guaranteed success. You'll be amazed at how easy and satisfying it is to create brand new plants yourself. And that brings us to the final stage of our strategy, closing the infinite loop. So, here's the process. In the spring, you took cuttings from your overwintered mother plant and grew beautiful starts from them. You then transplanted them into your greenhouse or the open garden. This summer, these clone plants will give you a magnificent harvest, perfectly replicating the taste and characteristics of the parent. But what happens next? The cycle repeats itself. In the middle of summer, you can take new side shoots or secondary cuttings from these new bushes, root them, and get a second wave of production. And at the end of the season, you will once again select the very best, strongest specimens from that batch and take cuttings from them for overwintering. In this way, your favourite variety will live on eternally, moving seamlessly from year to year and from one generation of plants to the next. You are no longer dependent on seed companies or the unpredictable weather conditions involved in starting seeds. You now possess your own proven, reliable genetic material. This isn't just a simple agricultural technique, it's a philosophy of smart, economical gardening that gives you complete control over your harvest. Once you try this method, you are highly unlikely to ever go back to traditional growing methods. So let's quickly summarise what we learned today. Today, we unlock the secret to growing tomatoes practically forever. We discovered that simple cloning, or vegetative propagation, which is really just taking cuttings, allows you to create exact copies of your most successful plants. This method gives you a 100% guarantee that you can preserve your favourite variety, drastically speeds up your harvest time, and saves you a ton of money and hassle on buying new seeds and raising seedlings every single year. We walk through the entire process step by step, from selecting the ideal mother plant and properly trimming your cuttings, to using 2 different methods for rooting them, and most importantly, how to successfully overwinter those plants inside your home. Now you know exactly how to turn your windowsill into a thriving nursery for future elite seedlings. This technique is a serious game changer, a genuine gardening hack that unlocks incredible opportunities for every single gardener. Thank you so much for sticking with the video all the way to the end. If you found this information helpful, please support the channel by hitting that like button and subscribing so you don't miss out on future gardening secrets. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever tried rooting tomato suckers or cuttings from other plants? Share your experience or ask any lingering questions down in the comments below. Let's start a discussion.